Hello and welcome to Tank and AFV News. My name's Tom, and today we are looking at a book, obviously. This one is American Panther Tanks by Craig Moore. And you might be asking yourself, what the heck is an American Panther tank? Everybody knows the Panther was German. Well, of course. But what this book looks at specifically, as the subtitle here says, an examination of the 5 surviving Panzer V tanks, including the Rare Panther II. So these are the 5 Panther tanks that are still in existence in North America, the United States specifically. Now, I think something like at least 16 or so Panthers were brought over to the United States during and after World War II, but most of them got scrapped or expended as range targets. So these 5 are the survivors. 4 of them belong to the U.S. government, and those are all down at Fort Benning now, although they used to be housed either at, 2 of them were at Fort Knox for a while, and the others at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. But then they got moved around a bit. But everything's down in Fort Benning nowadays. And then the other was from the private collection of Jacques Littlefield, which is now part of the Collins Foundation Museum. So, anyhow, that's what this book is. It's just an examination of those 5 tanks, and it's a rather well done examination with plenty of content. So this is a softcover book, as you can see, fairly large in terms of the format. It's like bigger than, I would say, like the Offspring of Vanguard series most people are familiar with, and it's about 150 pages, and lots of nice color photographs. So let's take a look here. So the content's pretty simple: 5 chapters, 5 tanks, and it starts with obviously acknowledgments. Looking through here, lots of names of well-known tank researchers that I recognized. So that's always a good sign when you can see who the author consulted. Introduction, and right into the Panther II. Now, the Panther II is one of the more unusual ones in that it was only a prototype, never went to production in Germany, and it's the turret is just from a different Panther that just got sort of slapped on top of it for display purposes. But the Panther II was created when the Germans realized, when the Panther first went into service, that the lower side hull were still vulnerable at close-ranged Soviet anti-tank rifles. And so they decided, well, maybe we should just build a heavier armored vehicle version of it. But then the easier and more economical solution of just hanging shirts and plates on the side, which deflected the anti-tank rifle bullets just enough so that when they did reach the main armor, they had lost some of their potency. And you can see it says that right here: Soviet anti-tank rifle menace. So the way this is laid out is he's got several pages of description at the beginning of each one. So armor, development, suspension, tank tracks, radio operator, power unit, turret, production, surviving Panther II hull, specifications, and then a whole lot of color pictures of the vehicle as it is now. So like I said, down in Fort Benning, they are in the process of doing external restorations on a lot of these vehicles and putting them in new buildings, which hopefully at some point they'll have some open houses for the public to go see them. Although for me personally, I'm in Michigan, so getting down to Fort Benning would be a heck of a drive, but it'd still be really exciting to see some of this stuff. You can see the author brought his tape measure, so he's doing actual physical measurements of some of the armor plate. So that will be of interest, because there's always people that seem to like to argue about armor values online. So here's the visual proof. And then just lots and lots of detail photographs. So this is going to be a really useful guide for model builders. If you're trying to make a Panther II, and I don't even know if there are Panther II kits out there, but let's say you're scratch building one. These are going to be really useful photographs of the different systems and details on the tank. And you can see there's quite a bit, all with captions. So the author has put in quite a bit of work on this. I think this is, I've seen a few of his books, and I think this is probably the best one so far. So we will skip ahead. Now we get to the Panzer V Ausführung A Panther tank at Fort Benning. This one used to be at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, outside, sitting there, which I actually got to see when I was a kid in the 80s. We stopped by there as part of a family trip. And so the A was not the first production version, which is sort of weird. For some reason with the Panther, and I don't know why, the Germans just sort of seem to not go with alphabetical order with the model types, unlike as they had done with previous tanks. So it starts with D, then A, then G, then the F, which never actually went into production. And of course, the different changes between those models don't always correspond neatly to each letter change. So you can have vehicles that kind of have characteristics of different types. Anyhow, for somebody who's interested though in making a model of a Osprong A, these pictures are going to be a really nice resource because again, he's sort of done the same thing, gone through with extensive, well-written captions and lots of photographs. Nice quality paper, you know, it's got a little bit of gloss to it, so that you can really the images really sort of pop out at you. It's you know, not like some of the books where it's printed on more of a flat matte paper, and the photos don't look as nice. Skipping ahead, so after this one we get to Panzer V Osprong G, Panther training tank at Fort Benning. Now this one's interesting because this one was also down at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, and I went through because when we did that family trip years ago in the 80s, I even took a photo of this particular tank, and then you can see the previous one in the background right there. And it's really probably hard to tell, but you can see that there's, maybe you can't on the camera, on the sides of the tank here, it's very clearly that they put like sheet metal to cover up the holes, because this particular one was used, the reason it says training tank is because this one had gotten all cut up. So when they used to have this indoors at Aberdeen, I've seen old videos from the 50s of it inside, same with the Tiger tank, and they had cut all these panels out of the side because the reason for keeping these tanks wasn't so much for museum purposes, not so much to preserve them, but to use them as training aids for soldiers. And that's still the purpose of the collection of Fort Benning. It is first and foremost a trading facility. It's not a museum, quote unquote, which is why it's not technically open to the public unless they have public open houses. So this one, the G, which is one of the later models, you can see it's got the chin on the lower mantlet, which is one of the most characteristic things you can use to recognize some of the later Panthers as they were designed. So again, same as with the other chapters, lots of detailed photos, so we'll skip ahead here and get to the last one. This is the roughest one, the Panzer Osprong G at Fort Benning. This one also was at Aberdeen, and then in the early 70s it said it went to Fort Knox. It was missing the tracks, and they said they used the engine out of this one to put into the Panther II, which I guess they used to run at Fort Knox in the 70s and whatnot. It was for a certain part of time. Which would have been pretty interesting to see because obviously running Panthers are pretty rare creatures. Again, see the pictures, you can sort of see the fairly sad state of the exterior. Certainly could use a bit of little TLC and some paint. But plenty of detailed photos. And then, let's skip to the last one here. The last one is, of course, the Osprong A. This is the one that's in private hands. It is part of the American Heritage Museum, which is owned by the Collins Foundation in Massachusetts. And this tank was part of the Littlefield collection. And probably most people watching this are aware, if you've seen they've done some TV shows on it. But Jacques Littlefield was a very wealthy collector of armored vehicles, of the largest private collection in the world. And this was the centerpiece of his collection, and it was an incredibly poor condition Panther that had been pulled out of a river after like 50 years, and he had sunk a lot of money and time into restoring this, and it finally was restored in 2009, the last year of his life, and it was really sort of the crown jewel of his collection. So when he passed, the collection was given to Collins Foundation, who auctioned off some of the less desirable pieces in order to be able to build a suitable museum space for the better half of the collection, and that's where this one is. So it's sort of ironic that the one that is in by far the best condition now is the one that was in the worst condition before its restoration, and that's because it was a project of a man who really wanted a nice looking Panther and had the resources and the money to do it. And so you can see pictures of the vehicle, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It really is just a incredible restoration job that they did. So people interested in that will really appreciate these pictures. You can see the internal crew compartments, because of course this one's been restored internally. So like at Fort Benning, they're just doing external restorations on those vehicles. they don't have the resources to restore them to this sort of condition, because this takes a whole lot of money. And then there's this nice appendix at the back of the other surviving Panthers around the world. So here we have the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, England, the Wheatcroft Foundation, which is another private collector with quite a collection, and Panzer Museum Munster, another one in Germany. So there's quite a few. They're not nearly as rare as Tigers, which makes sense because quite a bit more Panthers were built in the first place, but they're certainly not common, and one in good condition is worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to the right collectors. So there you have it. So if you are interested in the Panther, particularly in which ones still exist and are in North America, then this book will be of great interest to you. It is, let's see what the price is, £22 in the UK or $32 in the United States. I'm assuming you probably find it for a little less than that online at your favorite online book vendors. I would definitely recommend this one. I'm very pleased with it. So thank you to the fine folks at Casemate, and we'll catch you on the next one.